reconvene to open session. And before we start, Superintendent Walker has something that she's going to read for us to represent us. So, whenever you're ready.
I'm just getting my computer up.
Sorry, put you on the spot.
You were too fast. And Nate, I'm assuming that we are up and running? We're up and running, we're on YouTube. The stream is being great. Okay, thank you, Vice President Makela. Good evening, everyone. Yesterday, December 8th, the Fort Bragg Unified family suffered a tragic loss. Roger Eck Gongora passed away peacefully in Oakland's Children's Hospital with his family by his side. Roger was a senior at Fort Bragg High School. He was a loving son to his parents, an incredible brother to his siblings, and a devoted friend to all who knew him. He was 17 years old with a bright future ahead of him. His time on this earth was too short, and we are deeply saddened by his sudden passing. The class of 2022 will never be the same without him. Please join us in a moment of silence to honor the memory of Roger Eck Gongora. Thank you. Donations to Roger's family may be made through the Mendocino Coast Children's Fund. The Children's Fund will ensure that all funds collected in Roger's name will be donated directly to the family. Thank you, folks, and our hearts and prayers go out to his family and all who knew him.
Thank you, Superintendent Walker. Item 3.2, report of final action. There's nothing to report from closed session. So we'll move on to item 3.3, which we need to make some amendments. Due to a change in Ed Code governing the organizational meetings, which now need to occur after December 10th or on December 10th or later. We're going to table items 4.1 through 4.5, item 11.1, and item 12.2. So may I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
And just before we do the motion, I want to reiterate my apologies to the board and to the public. When we set up the meetings last year at this time, I didn't recognize that the organizational meeting had to occur after December 10th. So when we had planned this meeting, the second Thursday of the month like we normally do, I didn't recognize that time. So that's why this is being tabled. It's not because of any other reason other than an Ed Code provision that we are required to do the organizational meeting after December 10th. So my apologies. I just wanted to say that publicly.
Oh, thank you. And I should have gone back and also said that we have two of our board members, President Paoli and Trustee Mattson, were not able to come tonight, so I think it's probably okay. These items will all be addressed at the special board meeting on Monday, December 13th at 5 p.m.
And that meeting will be live streamed. So
great.
Anybody who wants to watch the riveting meeting can watch.
So any questions or comments? Scott or Kathy?
No.
So may I have a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion to adjust the agenda as stated.
And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion Carol, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Then motion carried. And public comment on non-agenda items, I need to read a little bit here. Individuals may address the board on agenda items on both the closed session and regular session agenda during public comment and/or at the time they are under consideration by completing the speaker form provided on the table at the entrance and submitting to Renee Holes, the administrative assistant. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per individual. Speakers will be chosen in random order. Each person may only speak once per agenda topic and are now required to address the board from the podium. Public comment cannot be acted upon or discussed by the board unless placed on an agenda at a subsequent meeting in accordance with the Brown Act. The board may request staff to respond orally at the meeting or in writing at a future time. A total of 20 minutes public comments per topic will be allowed. If you require translation service, please contact Renee Holes at the district office 72 hours in advance by phone, 707-961-3504, or by email. The meeting is videotaped and broadcasted on FBUSD YouTube channel. Members, for virtual public disclosures, members of the public who wish to address the board during the board meeting are asked to please submit prior to the start of the meeting by emailing boardmeeting@fbusd.us. Staff will make all attempts to share and record any submissions received prior to or during the board meeting. However, depending on timing, late submissions may be provided to the board after the conclusion of the meeting. Comments are limited to approximately 390 words. Okay, I think that's all of that for now. And before we go any further, I wanted to read our mission and vision. Every student receives engaging and challenging learning experiences to reach their greatest potential and thrive in a diverse global society. Our mission, FBUSD delivers exceptional, engaging, equitable, and collaborative learning opportunities for all students. Okay, moving on, patriotic exercise.
And just really quickly, we have no public comment on agenda items in the board meeting email address.
Oh, great, thank you. And patriotic exercise was Trustee Mattson, but I believe he sent something in for us.
Yes, he did. He sent a video for the board to
And that was checking for non-agenda items, right? In the email,
There are no public comments,
period.
period.
That's correct. There are none. And we did a sound check earlier, so I apologize if it's a little off.
On Sunday, December 7th, 1941, shortly before 8 a.m., Japan launched a surprise attack on the United States of America by bombing the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The base was attacked by 350 Imperial Japanese aircrafts. Though the raid only lasted 75 minutes, the Japanese destroyed or damaged nearly 20 American naval vessels, including 8 battleships and more than 340 airplanes. Over 2,400 Americans died in the attack, and many more were wounded. While the attack on Pearl Harbor was a surprise, tensions between the U.S. and Japan had deteriorated over the decade, in particular with regards to Japan's expansion into China. The plan for attacking Pearl Harbor was to destroy the U.S.'s Pacific Fleet, a move which would give the Japanese time to carry out its plans to keep control of the Pacific without U.S. interference. The shock of the attack without declaration of war enraged the American public and rallied the nation to get behind a war many hoped to avoid. At the beginning of his speech to Congress requesting a declaration of war, President Franklin D. Roosevelt delivered this now famous line.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
On December 8, 1941, one day after the attack, the United States Congress declared war on Japan, officially entering World War II.
So it was Trustee Mattson's wish that everyone would take a moment to recognize that December 7th, 2021 marked the 80th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor. He wanted to make sure that everyone could take this into consideration, that, and remember that there were 2,400 plus Americans who lost their lives on that day, just on that one single day. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Renee, and to all of our veterans, thank you for your service. Oh, God, sorry. Okay, moving on to item 6.1, acknowledgements.
So we had a donation of $204.25 was made to the Alt Ed School by the First Presbyterian Church. Books were donated by Copperfield Books of Petaluma from children's author David Pilkey. 360 copies of Cat Kid by David Pilkey for students of Dana Gray Elementary School. The retail value for that is $4,676.40. And just to let you know, what's unique about this is that Mr. Pilkey actually spoke to the kids at Dana Gray via a virtual meeting. And he is the author of the Dogman books. And so the kids were very excited, and during that virtual meeting, he said that he was going to send the kids a book. And I don't think anybody believed that it was going to happen, and then the shipment shows up, and there was a book for every kid.
Oh,
So it was pretty exciting. So thank you, Mr. Pilkey.
okay, thank you. Moving on to communications. Has any board members received any communication?
I received an email from a community and parent about a recent accident at the intersection of Oak and Herald. With some kids walking to school, and wanting to know what we could do to help support getting some sort of stoplight or something at that intersection to avoid any further accidents or people getting hurt, especially since we promote walking to school.
And Trustee Schneider, just to let you know, I attended the committee meeting today for the city of Fort Bragg, where they were discussing, I believe it was facilities. And I was able to provide public comment on non-agenda items and brought this issue up to them. And they were very receptive, and they hope to add it to the, you know the names of the committees better than me. The public is meeting on Monday.
Perfect.
So they were very receptive. They understand that there's an issue. And I appreciate that the mom reached out to you. She had also reached out to me earlier as well, so.
Great, thank you, Becky. And Kathy, anything?
I received an email regarding the skunk train. I think everybody got that one.
I don't know if I did.
Okay. Just about an update on, they were forwarding the news article about the skunk train city politics. And then we got an email from Scott Menzies about solar. And then there was another one, I'm trying to find it now, from a lead. I think it was a follow-up to the solar, but I don't remember who
Oh,
it was
yes,
from.
there was a second one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay,
And
those
that's it.
are, yeah, same that I got as
Mhm.
well. Okay, moving on to item 8. Is there any public comment on agenda items?
I see no public comment at this time.
Okay, we'll move on. Our student representative is not here, so we'll move on to item 9.2, superintendent report.
So the first item under the superintendent report is California State COVID-19 vaccination update. We wanted to put this on the agenda so that I could give you an update on what I'm hearing from the state, what I'm hearing from our legislative partners as far as where we are with a COVID vaccination, either a mandate or a status report. On December 2nd, I attended the Superintendency Council meeting that's hosted by ACSA, which is the Association of California School Administrators. This was a heavy topic at that meeting. Right now, the government relation advocates for ACSA, they do believe that the state is pushing very, very diligently, and I don't know if that's the right adverb for it, but they're pushing hard for a vaccine mandate for students. And it is to follow the approval of the FDA approval of the current vaccines. Because the governor is using his regulatory powers to push this forward through the legislature, then there must be a personal belief exemption and a medical exemption. So then the question becomes, well, if you have a personal belief exemption, then why is it a mandate? And that was actually brought up, those exact words were brought up today at the superintendent council meeting that we had for AXA. Every Thursday, the superintendents in the state get onto a virtual meeting and we hear from AXA on what is happening at the state level. So that's what happened this morning at that meeting. The vaccine mandates were discussed again. It looks like there are a few senators who are pushing for the mandate statewide. What I would say to all of you and to everybody who's watching is 2/3 of our legislatures are up for re-election in June. Whatever your opinion is on the mandate, it's important to let our lawmakers know what your opinions are. They are the ones who are going to vote. We are not the ones who are going to vote. I had a couple of parents call me and ask, when is the school board going to vote on a COVID-19 mandate? The school board takes an oath to uphold the law of California and specifically the Education Code of California. If there is a mandate that comes down from the governor, then you are obligated by your oath of office to follow and adhere to the laws of California. Someone had made the comment to me, well, Becky, you can oppose it. Well, here's what happens to an administrator. We all have a credential that is issued by the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing. When we have that credential, we essentially say that we are going to uphold the laws of the state of California. I was very clear to the few parents that I've spoken to that while I don't agree with the mandate, I am not going to risk my credential for it. So this is a very hot political topic. Right now, we're waiting for the legislature to have some proposal of policy language to make this happen or not happen, and then there would be a vote. In order to push this through for the July 1 start of school, it would need a 2/3 supermajority vote. 2/3 of the legislature is up for re-election. It's important, regardless of what your opinion is, that if you feel strongly about it, that you should let your legislators know. I did have a 45-minute conversation with Senator McGuire to express my concern on pushing forward with the mandate. I 100% believe that we need to keep our folks safe. We will do what the state tells us to do. My concern is that a mandate has the ability to create a divisive environment in our community, and that concerns me. We have many options for parents, and I hope that parents exercise the option that is best for their family. So for right now, what I can tell you with this update is we have nothing in policy right now. We don't even have proposed policy on the table right now. We are told, the superintendents are told that this is moving forward and that more than likely we can anticipate that there will probably be a vaccine mandate come July 1, but it's looking like it's going to be for the 12 and older kids because AXA believes that FDA approval will come sooner than the 5 to 11-year-olds. One of the things that AXA had said was that the 16 and over, the 16, 17, and 18-year-olds, that's going to come sooner than the 12 and older. So this could come in stages. I don't know what's ultimately going to happen. 3 months ago, if you had asked me, what do you think is going to happen, Becky? I would have told you, I think this is going to get caught up in the courts, and I don't know if a mandate's going to actually be able to happen. I can honestly say I don't know what's going to happen. We have to prepare for whatever is going to happen and make sure that we have options for our families. So with that, that's where we're at with the COVID status. We have vaccinations available now for anyone ages 5 and older. People have a choice to get vaccinated or not vaccinated. Right now, as for our employees must show us verification of vaccination, or they have to test weekly. The next move on that will be if the legislature pushes that school employees must have this vaccine in order to be employed. The personal belief exemption is not being discussed right now for school employees and state workers, nor is a medical exemption. So we have to wait and see what happens at this point. And again, if people have strong feelings, I would encourage you to contact your legislatures. So I have very vague news for you, which means, is this moving forward? Yes. Is it really going to happen? I don't know. The people at AXA who give us our information, they believe that it will likely happen. And now we wait. Right now, there are 4 lawsuits currently in the courts. 3 of them are based out of San Diego. 1 of them is based out of LA. And those are the 4 lawsuits that we are all watching, because that will determine what the next step is. So for now, that's where we sit. Fort Bragg Unified is not doing anything to move forward right now with a mandate. I am not encouraging us to do the LA Unified or the San Diego Unified approach, which is create a mandate before it's
Right.
required through the state. We are in a holding pattern. So we continue to enforce the mandates that we have on the current vaccines that have gone through the legislature, but nothing more than that.
Okay, thank you. And any comments or questions?
Well, I just want to say that I did contact the governor, the superintendent or state superintendent, and my legislatures as a parent, not as a school board member, but I think it's important that we do what we can to voice our opinions so that we don't have to be the ones to enforce something that we may or may not believe in.
Scott?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, thank you for a really thorough report, Superintendent Walker. I think it was important that people do understand that we did take an oath of office and we do have to follow the laws of the state. We don't get to pick and choose. So I appreciate that. Okay, we'll move on to item 9.2.2, counseling report and student outreach.
So this is part of our goal to really keep a nice, beautiful focus in our board meetings where we have student reports and what's going on with kids. You see before you reports from Catherine Bernsdorf, our Redwood Elementary counselor, from Carl Cook, our Dana Gray counselor, from Erica Malsum, our middle school counselor, from Mark Boley and Tomas Sanchez, our high school counselors, and then from Hallie DeVrill and her team, which includes Brandy Davis, Alex O'Malley, and Talia Nadeau, to just see what's going on in our district when it comes to working with students and serving their mental health. I want to throw a huge shout out and many, many accolades to the entire counseling team. They have been at Fort Bragg High School much of this week to be on the ready for kids, to really just be present and be supportive of our students during this difficult time, and to be present and ready for Roger Eck's friends and support group and his cousins and his family. So our counseling team has been amazing. They have been burning the candle from both ends and really being available for our kids. So this report, while it shows many things, it doesn't show the little things that they do outside of their job to make sure they're supporting our students. So thank you to the counseling team. Any questions?
I'm just going to say, yeah, I so appreciate them, and this was so nice to read. I enjoyed every second of it, and the pictures are appreciated as well. Do we have other comments, questions?
I just wanted to say thanks. You know, this has always been a grave concern with COVID and a year being at home and now back at school, and just all the stresses and anxieties out there it's nice to hear what's going on in this part of what's happening in school. So thank you to the counseling team for putting this together.
Nice to see the kids and the staff being so well supported. Kathy? Nope. Okay. Moving on to item 9.2.3, kudos and assets update.
So Kudos and Assets, they get to have a lot of pictures because when you sign up for Kudos and Assets, there's a photo release right in the registration. And so when I had asked them to give us a brief report, they were excited, I think, more about the pictures because you can really see what kids are doing. We have a lot of things happening in our after-school program, and it's been really a joy to watch some of the activities, from the robot making and the STEM classes to the guitar to the art classes, and there's a lot going on. So I want to just thank Beth Pine for her leadership, and include Sandra Johnson, Jill Chabot, and Jennifer Ray, who's probably been with us just as long as Beth, of holding our after-school programs together. So you can see from this report the number of things that are happening, the schedules, the wonderful projects that they're creating and doing. This was a fun report. This was fun to read. This was fun to look at. So, questions?
Comments, questions? No? I just have to say, well, two things. One, this paper mache leaf bowl is beautiful. I want one. Those are so pretty. And it was funny as I was looking at the pictures, and I was on my iPad, so I was blowing them up so I could see them more clearly. And it was like, oh, it's so nice to see all these smiling faces. And I went, wait, I actually can't see their smiles at all, but their eyes are just shining. And I realized that, oh, that's a big part of the smile as well. And they all look so happy. It was really awesome to see. So thank you to the Assets and Kudos staff.
And look, here's Beth Pine.
Oh, and there she is, the
Beth,
lady
we
of the
are just
hour.
finishing up with the Kudos and Assets report. Is there anything you would like to share? Sorry, I didn't even give you a chance to walk in and sit.
That's okay. Well, I did want to.
You need to go to the mic, sorry.
Now that you've sat down.
Hello. Well, the one thing I didn't include in my report, by the way, my name's Beth Pine. I'm sure you guys know me by now. Kudos Assets Program Coordinator. And the one thing I didn't share in my report was that we had a great honor with Dolores, our STEM instructor this year. She was included, one of her STEM classes was included in the STEAM Hub, which is, it's a California symposium for educators, but it also has educators attend from other areas, and we had one attend her session from Texas. So it was really a great honor to have her class. It was a virtual event, and it was a great honor. And it kind of like highlighted how wonderful job that Dolores does. I know she does a wonderful job throughout the school day, but she does a great job in Kudos as well with the STEM program, and has for many years. So I just wanted to add that to the report.
Well, thank you, Beth. Yeah, she's a sweetheart for sure. And this was a really lovely report. Thank you.
Well, since Beth is here, can
Yes.
we remind the public about her recognition?
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't want to mess up what it was, so Becky, do you remember the name of it, or? should we-
So, Beth, back you go. Beth was honored
It was
by the
last
state.
month, right?
Yeah, Beth was honored by the state and was awarded for excellence in our after-school program.
Yeah, it was the leadership award, and yes, I was really shocked and honored to receive that this year. I've been doing a lot of work on committees through the region and through the state, and so I think that's why I got nominated, but I was still very shocked and very honored and humbled to get that. Thank you.
Well, I think that's very exciting that our district, not only were you honored for that work, but also Dolores being, people looking at our school district as role models, and I think that's great. I love
Yeah.
to hear it, and I will say that my children loved Dolores
Yeah, she's
as in
wonderful.
Kudos program. She is wonderful.
Yeah, we're very fortunate, for sure. Okay, moving on to item 9.2.4, attendance report.
So you have in the packet the attendance report. I wanted to provide the board the opportunity to look at total enrollments, to look at attendance and how we've been doing every month. The percentages that you see in the attendance for the schools is based on number of students in seats that day. This does include our independent study numbers. Independent study is calculated a little bit different with attendance, but all those numbers are included. So it's important that we remind our families that school attendance is important. School attendance really helps your children succeed in school. It's difficult to move forward in the curriculum and move forward in their learning when they're not in their seat at school. So again, just wanting to call attention to the numbers. The nice thing is that you can see that most of our schools, the attendance has improved over time. And the other thing I wanted you to look at is the total enrollment. In 2019, and I'm doing some math here really quickly.
1814.
For 1920? Okay. So in 2019-20, we had 1,814 students enrolled. In 2020-21, we had 1,000. I did those two. Thank you, Wendy. Good job.
I have on my report too.
And I'm sorry I didn't total them up for you, but basically what I want to highlight here is that pre-COVID, 1920, we had 1,814 students enrolled in our schools. After COVID hit and we opened in the fall of August 2020, on Information Day in October, we had 1,694 students enrolled. That was a loss of 120 students. And that loss of 120 students is significant. We had hoped that we were going to gain some of those 120 back when we opened up this fall. Unfortunately, we declined by another 25 students. So when we started school in 2021, we had fewer students again, and on Information Day, which is October 7th, we had 1,669 students enrolled. I'm calling your attention to this because we are an ADA-funded district. ADA is average daily attendance. It's something to consider as we move forward. This is a significant loss. I am hoping that as our programs open up, as COVID subsides, that we will have students returning. We have, I believe Sarah said today, there were 22 students on private school affidavits. So those students are out there who could return. We have students who've left the area with their families for work or housing or whatever the reason. So it's something that we need to be mindful of.
Is this similar in other districts in the county?
Believe it or not, the greater majority of public schools who are funded on ADA are all experiencing significant declines. This is not unique to us.
And any other comments, questions? Oh, okay, is there any public comment?
There is no public comment.
Okay, we'll move on to the item 9.2.5, the construction projects update.
We just recently met with our architect again to review the plans for Alt Ed, and Barry Silva provided this report for you so you could see the individual categories that we're working with right now for construction.
Any comments, questions?
What is, for the shade structure, what is DSA back check?
So DSA is the Department of State Architects, and they have to approve the plans before construction can begin. And it is still there.
All right, we've been
Um,
waiting.
But actually, wait a minute, didn't it come back, Wendy?
I think that was the windows. came
Oh,
back.
okay. Something came back this week. So the shade structures, we're still waiting for it to return. We're hoping that that's going to get done here within the next month, and that actually construction on the shade structures could begin potentially in April. The hard part about construction with the shade structures is that where they are, where they're going to be located, it's gonna be pretty loud. So it may be in our best interest to wait till summer to get them all up and running. The high school, it's impossible. We have to wait until the summer because it's right in the middle. We're not gonna be able to we're not gonna be able to fence off that area from kids for 2 to 3 weeks. That's just not gonna happen.
Right.
So what we're looking at is doing the high school for sure in the summer, which then means we're probably gonna do the other sites in the summer, so the construction crew comes in for one period of time rather than back and forth, back and forth.
Mhm.
So
Okay, and they take about 3 weeks each?
the company tells us that they can be erected within 10 days.
Holy smokes.
Wow.
But if Jerry were here,
Right.
but this is what they do. This is the only thing they do. So I'm hoping that they're correct.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Then we will move on to item 10, approval of agenda consent items. And usually as the
There's
vice
two
president.
reports.
And
Pardon me?
2 reports.
Oh, excuse me. Item 9.3, the California School Employee Association's report.
So their president, Martha Lopez, came into my office today and expressed her apologies that she would not be here tonight. She's been helping the families and the kids with our current student who passed, and so she needed to be home with her family tonight. So absolutely, we thank her. And Gary Lewis, the Fort Bragg District Teachers Association president, was unable to be here tonight as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kathy. All righty, now moving on to approval of agenda consent items, and I do have a question. Normally, as the vice president, I read this, so who reads it tonight? Does Wendy
Who
know?
would like to read it tonight?
Who would like to read it tonight?
Doesn't matter. It's not a thing. It's just what we've always done.
Okay, so it's not a Brown Act, it's not any of those things?
No.
Okay, I'll just go ahead and read them. We'll be done. Okay, item 10.1, warrants. Item 10.2, minutes for November 8th, 2021 special meeting, November 10th, 2021 board workshop, November 18th, 2021 regular meeting. Item 10.3, personnel action report. Item 10.4, contracts. And item 10.5, disposal of obsolete materials. Are there any questions, comments? I forget this too, because I always read them. Do I have to ask for a motion for this one? So ask for a motion
I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
and a second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Moving on to board action items. Item 11.1 has been tabled until our special meeting coming up on Monday, the 13th. So we'll move on to item 11.2, Educator Effectiveness Block Grant.
So this was presented to you at the last meeting. It's something we have to do, and Wendy, this was under your name.
We did not change it from the last meeting. We brought it up for discussion. Again, everything coming from the state about this is more about the process at this point, about having some kind of a plan or an idea, and it's always subject to change and revision moving forward. So it's not even close to cast in stone. It's very much putty.
All righty. Any questions, comments?
And we
No.
have no public comment.
Okay, then I'll go ahead and ask for a motion.
I'll move to approve the educator effectiveness block grant as
Thank-
presented.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, and Renee, roll call?
Trustee Babcock?
Yes.
Trustee Schneider?
Yes.
Trustee Matkala?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, item 11.3, resolution on accounting of development fees.
Okay, this is an annual resolution and report that's brought to the board that talks about the developer fees that were collected this year and how they were used and what the ending balance is and what we are planning to do with it. It wasn't a bad year. We collected nearly $200,000 in developer fees. There is a small piece of that that is going to be returned because the planning department sent some folks to us that should have gone to another district. So we're so that'll be an adjustment on next year's because we didn't discover it till after the year was closed. So some of those will be being returned. So it was really about $175,000 that we brought in for us. We're currently using them to fund the TLC lease, building lease, and the Shelter Cove portable building. And you can see at the bottom line, we have about $300,000 left in that fund right now, and which is comforting because, as we know, there are always potential cost overruns in construction projects, so we'll have that there since it's already been allocated toward Shelter Cove to help support the alt ed campus if it does run into greater cost than we're anticipating.
Oh, great. Okay, any questions or comments?
And all of the fees this year were residential. There were no commercial fees.
Okay, seeing none, may I have a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 21-09 regarding account of development fees for the 2020-2021 fiscal year.
Thank you, and a second?
Yes.
Okay, Renee?
Trustee Schneider?
Yes?
Trustee Makla?
Yes?
Trustee Babcock?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 11.4, 2021-22 first interim report.
Okay, so I just was going to go over the front page of the notes and points of interest for this and see if that raised any other questions. The major changes since budget adoption are that the state budget was finalized, and which hadn't happened when we adopted the budget. So we have a clearer picture of that. We have a much clearer picture of some of the COVID relief funds. They're in the revenue expense budgets that we didn't have in there yet because they were still splitting them up. 2 of the resources ended up being split into 6. So once we got that information, we're able to kind of prepare budgets. We're still moving things around because it's just a little crazy. There's a more accurate carryover number when we do the budget adoption. Those ending figures are based still on budget rather than actual, so the unaudited actuals number is now what we're looking at for carryovers. Our staffing and enrollment has settled a little bit, so we know where people are, how many people we have, and what they're doing. So that piece is a little better under control. And then with that, we have a little better idea of the impact on our subsequent years. One of the biggest pieces is supplemental concentration. The concentration span increase. So there's the base funding. There's a little extra layer for supplemental based on your unduplicated count, and then if your unduplicated count is high enough, there's another layer that gets added. It used to be that was at 50% of the base for in excess of 55%. Now, for the number of students beyond 55% unduplicated, it's 65% of the base for each of those students. So for us, that meant about $600,000, which was really nice because it kept our funding closer to last year than taking a reduction. So right now, because there's an awful lot of overlap in the intended use of a lot of the COVID relief money and supplemental concentration money, focusing on unduplicated counts and learning loss and things like that. We haven't planned to spend the supplemental concentration money. We're spending the one-time grant money first, which is what we always try to do in that order. So the plan right now is to, in the coming couple of years, look at the programs that we started using the COVID relief funds and see if we feel they are successful and worthwhile keeping going, and then use the reserves we've saved in the supplemental concentration area to fund them moving forward. So that'll require a lot of, staff looking at the different programs that we started and the different pieces and layers, and see, okay, what's working and what's not, and then try to find a way to keep the things that are working. And so that's a perfect use of those funds. Becky talked a little bit about the enrollment, and it did not rebound the way we hoped. I was really hoping that this year we'd get about half of the ones we lost back, and instead it actually dropped a little. Right now, because you're always allowed to use your prior year enrollment and ADA held harmless, the higher of the prior year or the current year, we're still not seeing an impact on that, but next year we will see that if they maintain an ADA-funded model. There is some talk about them going to an enrollment model, which would help a little bit, but I don't know how they would adjust the per pupil spending based on enrollment. I mean, it's a very much unknown. But considering the current status we have, an ADA model, this could mean a loss for us of about $2 million next year. So it's something we definitely have to keep in mind. We'll see better in January when the governor's first shot at the budget comes out. We'll see what they're thinking, and hopefully get an idea of whether those thoughts are going to come to fruition or whether they're going to change drastically by May. Right now, our average daily attendance actually is better than we were thinking. In the notes, I said that it was down, due in part to a lot of kids quarantining and having to stay home. But actually, I think more of them are actually doing their short-term independent study work, and so we are collecting ADA for them. So the actual percentage ADA isn't terrible. It's a percentage of a lower enrollment, so it's still an impact.
Just a quick question about that. So I know when, Becky, you were going over the enrollment numbers, you included independent study, right?
Yes.
So are we not allowed to include required quarantine students as well?
That's enrollment.
We include them in enrollment, and if they do have to go out, we provide packets for them
Right.
because it's considered short-term.
Right.
And if they turn the work in, then they get credit for the days of work that they did.
But this on October 7th, like if we had 41 kids that were
They're still enrolled.
quarantined, okay.
So the numbers that we showed you were enrollment. How many kids do we have in our system?
Right.
Right? And then our attendance is how many kids are in.
Right, and that's measured
In
different
seats.
dates.
Yes.
Right.
We look at that December 7th, so to the end of this month actually is what we call P1, period 1. And that's when we look at, for this period of time, what's the average
Okay.
daily attendance from that enrollment. And then the one that we get funded on is P2, which is in the spring.
Got it.
So
I think
in that attendance report, so for instance, in the month of November, I believe the middle school had 96% attendance, which means in the month of November, 96% of the kids were at school on average every day. The kids who were on quarantine and finishing a short-term contract, if they finished their short-term contract, then they count as being in school that day.
Okay.
So if they were out for 10 days and they completed all 10 days of their work, then they get 10 days of attendance credit.
So as long as they do what they're required to do, then they're counted.
Yes.
Got it.
Currently, because of the anomaly of last year, we didn't have any contribution. We actually had a surplus in nutrition services, which was an unusual thing for us to have. And
It's never happened.
it's we don't know what to do with ourselves. And it was because of the way the state funded nutrition services last year. And the other thing that is kind of an unknown is that was just the second year that we were in what they call community eligibility provision, which is CEP. And because we have such a high socioeconomically disadvantaged population, all of our kids qualified for free lunch. So we had that 1 year, and then last year was the second year of that. Well, that just went out the window because they fed everybody. It didn't matter where you went to school. If you showed up and drove through the parking lot, you got food. And so all of those meals we got reimbursed for. This year is a little more normal in that we are just feeding our kids. But there's been a little bit of an augmentation in the funding, but we don't know exactly what's going to happen there. And the other thing that's impacting it is costs are increasing. So there's been quite a bit of inflation in food, paper products, and all of those things. So we haven't had a normal year under CEP yet, so we don't really know how it's going to impact us in the long run. We'll have a little better idea, I think, by the end of this year, once prices and supplies settle out a little bit. But having that little bit of surplus is kind of a nice thing to have moving forward, and it may even last for, be a couple of years as we work it down. So that's a kind of a comforting thing to have. The one thing that is not included in here yet is anything to do with the TK expansion, because we just don't have enough information yet. We don't know how much we're getting for our planning grant. We don't know how many students we're anticipating. We don't know what kind of staffing, so that'll be a second interim piece that we'll add to this once we have better information. At the moment, there is one piece of the part of the COVID, I guess, money called the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, which is not to be confused with the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant. So we have ELOP and we have ELOG. The ELOG is one that we are using extensively. We are used that for the summer program. We're using that for a lot of the extra things that are going on right now. The other one, the ELOP, is about $500,000. We are eligible for about $500,000. We are seriously considering not using this money because of the untenable strings attached. They require 50% participation. There's a ramp up, so it's not like tomorrow you would have to have 50% participation. But I think in the second year that happens. The other piece is that it requires a 9-hour day, including during the summer, including a summer program. And we have talked about this, we've wrestled with it. We just don't see having the human resources, if nothing else, to try to pull that off. I don't think we've completely jettisoned it, but the more we talk about it, the more untenable it seems. So while it's money it's always difficult to turn away money, sometimes you just can't jump through the hoops. It just doesn't feel like it's really going to work for us. So we'll keep you apprised.
And that one's a little tricky because you're going to hear different reports that the state's saying that we're required to participate. Well, the hard part is, okay, we're required to participate, but if we don't meet all the check boxes and do what we're supposed to do, the penalty is that you have to pay the money back. So what's difficult with this particular fund is that while it sounds like a lot of money, Wendy hit the nail on the head. To pull off a 9-hour school day for our kids and we have to have 50% of our students participate in it, where are we going to get the staffing? We can barely get the staffing right now for our after-school program. And Beth and the MCRPD team have done a remarkable job of finding people. But with this, they would become our employees, which means if we have a 9-hour day and we're working with our same employees, there are a whole host of issues that happen when they become our employees. Mm-hmm. Because now they have to take benefits. We have many employees who don't want them. Our scheduling is going to be a complete nightmare because in order to pull off a 9-hour day, it means we have an 8-hour employee who takes a 1-hour lunch. for some of our sites, that's an impossible feat to try and get an hour in there. And then the bigger elephant in the room is the facilities. Where are we going to put 50% of our kids after school until 5:30, 6 o'clock? We already have some struggles with kudos and assets. And again, our assets and kudos team does a remarkable job. So when Wendy says that we are struggling with the human resources on this, we really are. And so what we're looking at right now is we're just not touching it. Because if the penalty is that we have to give it back, if we've never
It's a
touched
wash,
it, there's
yeah.
nothing to give back. When I attended the AXA meeting, the Superintendent's Council last week in San Diego, this was a common theme. We had districts who were at 47% participation, and they said, well, now what do we do? And it was interesting to hear everything that districts were doing to try and make this happen. And more districts, especially the small rural districts, were saying, we're not touching it. While we would love to have the $500,000, while we would love to have the $200,000, we don't know how we were gonna pull it off, and it would be more detrimental to have to give it back. So we're kind of stuck in this place that we don't live in an area where we are flushed with people who are able to work. And that really is our number one problem right now.
Well, and getting 50% of your students to do a 9-hour summer school day.
Well,
That seems unlikely too.
There's a myriad of concerns with this. I think
Yeah.
it's very well intentioned, but not thoroughly thought out, especially our lawmakers forget that we are not a one-size-fits-all state. Our issues in Mendocino County, especially on the Mendocino coast, are much more unique than, or I should say not so much unique, but they're very different than what San Francisco Unified faces.
Okay. So, we are deficit spending, and some of the deficit spending in the third year is a little bit of leftover, the last bits of the COVID relief money, but there is some fairly significant spending. And if you look at page, now it's page 28 in that packet, you can see our bottom line looks really, really fat, especially if you look at the total combined restricted and unrestricted. And this particular page shows you the resources, the restricted resources broken down. And you can see the first one is that ELOP that we were just talking about. And then the numbers to the left, 32, 13, 16, 18, 19, 73, 88, 74, 25, and 74, 26. Those are all COVID monies that are being carried, we're figuring on carrying over from this year to next year. Most of those will be spent down. That large one that's resource 3213 is the shade structures in the windows and some network infrastructure, internet network infrastructure. And the other ones are things we've talked about. We know the things that we're doing with them. So I just wanted you to see that a very large chunk of the carryover is in those areas. Right now, the board reserve is a smidge below 6%, but as we get to the end of every year, we know that there are expenditures that don't happen because we didn't fill positions. We hope that inflation won't eat into all of the expected carryover that we hope to have. So we'll take a look at that at second interim and see if that's something we feel comfortable bumping back up to the 6%. I think we'll probably get there. And actually, I just said one area of concern is the current level of inflation. And I know Pilar is very concerned about that with food service. I'm concerned about it with utilities and other supplies. So we're just going to have to see what we can do about it. The current budget forecast looks really promising for additional revenues, and I know that's been all over the news and everything you're probably reading. And hopefully, that'll help offset some of the loss of enrollment that we'll be dealing with, loss of ADA for next year, so that could help. It could help alleviate some of the deficits moving forward if inflation doesn't eat up all of the potential increase. And like I said, the first go-around on the budget will be in January. It's not in time for the January meeting, so it'll be February before I can give you a report on what's in there, although you get inundated in your inboxes with what's in there. But, you know, what it means to us, I'll be able to give you an idea in February. They are talking about a potentially a 5% COLA, which would be nice, but then there was a thing that came out today and, you know, that said, is Omicron gonna, you know, put a little damper on that? They don't know. So everybody is, crystal ball is a little blurry right now. And because of some of this chaos, I'm still working on the budget book, but it was trying to fit all the new resources in and spread it out for you has been a little challenging. So I'm getting there. I will have that for you pretty soon.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions on there? And you can see in the multi-year projections with the assumptions in it, you have, you know, what we're looking at. The top, you can see the change in funded ADA that we're anticipating, and the other things that we're changing, like I talked about moving a lot of the COVID things we're spending using COVID money. We'll be moving to supplemental concentration, so you probably noticed that large shift from the salaries and benefits in the restricted side to the unrestricted side where supplemental concentration is. So that accounts for that shift. And then the reducing of some of the categories as the years go out.
Okay, well, thank you, and we've been leaning on you heavy tonight. You've had a lot, and this always, every time you do these reports, I'm just like blown away. I'm not a money person like this, and it counts, and I know Kathy gets it, but it's so much, and there's so many pots of money, and thank you so much for actually understanding it. Any questions or comments?
We have no public comment.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and ask for a motion.
I'll move to approve the 21-22 first interim report as presented.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Renee?
Trustee Makla,
Yes.
Trustee Babcock,
Yes.
Trustee Schneider,
Yes.
and motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So items 11.5 and 11.6, the FBUSD masking guidance for the 21-22 school year, and then the FBUSD 21-22 COVID-19 district protocols are things that we have agreed to keep on our agendas each month in case there are changes to the public health officer orders. And as of now, there are no changes. So unless there's a reason why we shouldn't, we'll go ahead and table those to our next regular meeting.
The only update I have for you on that is, and it's not something, it's still going to get tabled, there's no changes, but there was a masking update on basketball and athletics. So just so folks know, if you go into our gyms and you see our basketball players on the court playing without a mask during competition, that's because we test our athletes twice weekly, and we test them within 24 hours of gameplay. And then the team that comes is also tested 24 hours before gameplay, so that we know the only kids on the court are kids who are COVID-free. And our basketball players can actually tell you that there have been games canceled because of positive COVID athletes. So folks are taking it seriously, but that is the only change, is that while we do have an indoor masking order, there has been some flexibility with the practicality of an athlete running up and down the court with their mask on. But other than that, we're still following the masking guidelines as they were outlined for the classrooms in our schools. So there are no changes there.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 12.1, board policy, administrative regulations, and updates. And
So I have to tell you, I love the little cheat sheet.
thank you,
That-
thank you, thank you.
That, not that, you know, reading, 125 pages isn't just lovely. Sarcasm noted. I just have to say thank you, Renee, for the cheat sheet. It's
Yes.
fantastic.
Well, it really helps, because I still go through and read all the, what's coming out and in, but
Right.
then I know exactly what, anyway, it really does help and saves time, so
It
thank you.
helps focus.
Except I forgot my notes. That
Oh.
page was separate, but I think I remember. There was only the one thing I had questions on.
So there were a couple that require options that we have historically done. But were there any, Becky, that you felt needed discussion or?
The majority of these are law changes.
Mhm.
I didn't see anything on here that made me feel like, oh, we need to talk about this one and look at this. They're all pretty straightforward. I did take pause at some of the high school graduation requirement ones, but even those have been in effect for quite some time. They just added the COVID-19 part to it. So that, just so you know, with the high school graduation requirement, if we have a student who is in and out of foster care or incarceration, then the graduation requirements can be softened to the minimum of the California requirements. And this is kind of following that same vein. So, but when I looked at these, nothing jumped out at me.
Okay, no, me either. I do have a question about that. Would that be taking the requirements down to the adult ed, the same as that?
So there are minimum California requirements for a high school diploma.
Mhm.
And those minimums are really minimal. They're minimal.
Right.
And so our adult school doesn't go by the minimums.
Oh, they don't?
No, because our adult school has a 200 credit requirement. Still 4 years of English, 3 years of math,
Right.
2 years of science, 3 years of social studies, and no PE for adult school, but still the 60 credits of elective. So what this does, if we have students who have been impacted and they were on track to graduate, that's the caveat. They have
Mhm.
to have been on track to graduate.
Right.
Then they can go down to the minimum requirements, which is only 3 years of English, 2 years of
Oh.
math. It comes down significantly. So we haven't had that, we haven't had a case
Mhm.
yet. We have had some kids who, in the past, have exercised this option, and that's due to foster care situations or incarceration situations. But I have to say that both our high school and our alt ed does a great job to push kids to the finish line
Right.
and get them the classes and the courses they need in order to get their diploma. So
Definitely. So do we need to look at these options then on the two that require, or we?
I thought one of them was, because the one about the president and the vice
Mhm.
president, I thought we did option 2, because like for tonight, you're presiding on the
Right.
meeting instead of Becky. So I was a little confused on that one.
on the bylaws,
Yeah, the board
It's the
bylaw 92,
I think
9121.
it's is it 61? I'm sorry, I left that
is
page
it
at home.
9220?
No, it's 9121.
Is it
9121?
61 or 71? Page 61.
Okay.
I can't believe I left without that, but.
On that page.
Is that the one?
It's on
It's on
page
61, so.
9121 begins on page 109.
Yeah, I was way off. Memory was not.
Mine is loading.
So the
Is that
president shall
I'm sorry,
participate.
Mary, is that the first
Hmm?
option one, or did I skip something?
Um,
I don't have my thing printed out.
I put down option 2 is actually the current practice.
Okay, that's what I thought, yeah.
But it says here that option 1 is what we do.
But tonight we're doing option 2. Because
I think we've
option
always
1,
done that as long as I've been on the board.
the vice president has
Uh-huh.
done it, right? So option 1 says, when the president resigns or is absent, like tonight, the clerk shall perform the president's duties. When both the president and clerk are absent, the board shall choose a president pro tempore to perform the president's duties. What we have done, though, I agree with you, Kathy, is option 2. When the president resigns or is absent, the vice president shall perform the president's duties. When both the president and vice president are absent, the clerk shall perform the president's duties. That to me is what we've done.
Right.
We so rarely have had the
Mhm.
president absent. And this is only my 6th year, so I'm not completely well-versed on all this. So I would say if we're gonna do an option here, we should do 2.
I agree. That's what I wrote.
Mhm.
So we'll just address that at the next meeting when we,
Well, I think we make the suggestion now, and then
okay.
Renee puts it as that, and then
Great.
we just have to double check that it's there for the.
For 9121.
Yes. And then the options, I looked through the options on the board bylaw 9220, and those are all what we do currently. There's 4 different things: the election at large voting method, the candidate statement of 200 words, the electronic distribution of candidate statement, and the vote, board decides by lot, or tie vote, a board decides by lot. So, and that was the only one I wasn't positive, but I thought that's what we do, yeah. So. any
And the
dis-
first set of options with how we do the elections may reside anywhere within the district boundaries and elected by all voters in the district.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So, any other comments, questions?
And I know you're shocked, but there is no public comment.
Really? I'm shocked. Okay.
And just for feedback, I love this version with the strikeout, and I know it makes it long, but
It can be done a myriad of different ways.
yeah,
So
this
if you
one's
guys
great
like
in
this,
my opinion, yeah.
Me too.
Then this is
Uh,
how it'll be.
100% agree. Loved it.
Yeah, this is
Thank
really
you.
helpful.
It made it much more user-friendly. So we will go ahead and move on to item 13.1, board reports.
I feel like we just met.
Yeah, and then we went to Thanksgiving.
Yeah. I've just been attending a lot of middle school and high school basketball. That's it. And it's really, I mean, the gyms are full, and it's awesome. I will have to say that it would be nice if people would be consistent on the mandates. It makes me just kind of sad that it's pitting people. I feel like it's pitting people against each other. And it's not the school's rule, it's not but I would like to see that, but I know that's not gonna happen, but I just feel it separates our community. It doesn't
Yeah.
do anything else for the kids.
We do our best to ask the patrons to keep their masks on. And we never want to see it get to a place where it gets ugly. But Mr. Chimolino and Mr. Triplett are both here tonight, and I just want to thank them for their patience and their extreme kindness that they've shown to people in trying to request them to follow the rules.
Agreed. And Scott?
I don't have anything to report. Just hope everyone has a wonderful break and actually gets a chance to get a break.
Yes. Well, you and I attended board chat this morning,
Yes.
and we had a lovely conversation with Becky and Renee. And I know Susie was listening, but doesn't have a mic, so she couldn't chime in. One thing I wanted to mention, because we did just have a meeting 3 weeks ago, I think it was, but I know that we all read the CSBA, the California School Board Association. We get a school news magazine, we get the daily news roundup on our email to keep us informed. But I started thinking, can anybody get into this? I know we all have accounts, and so I checked, and anybody can go to CSBA or csba.org/newsroom, and you can have access to all of what's happening in California education. And there's a blog, there's the school news, monthly school news, the quarterly magazine, and then again, the roundups, daily roundup. But anyway, would very much encourage anybody who's interested in knowing what we're talking about. That's where I've learned most of what I know. So, and lastly, a huge thank you to all the staff for dedication, your care for the students. we are all, I know I can speak for everybody in this, we're all so grateful to live here and have such a wonderful staff. Very much appreciated. So, and happy holidays, like you said. Get out there and rest, have some fun with family and friends. So if nothing else, we can move on to housekeeping reminders. So we have our, how is this going to work for January? Because we're switching what schools we're attached to.
So I think you
We
should do
probably
that
should do
at
this-
your organizational meeting.
Okay, so
Put
let's,
these back, can you
Yeah.
put those back on there, Renee?
we'll just table 13.2 to Monday.
And that's why there's not a next board meeting listed.
Exactly. We'll
Got it.
figure that one out. Okay, well then, that being said, we are done. May I have a motion to adjourn?
In honor of Jerry, I motion to adjourn.
And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you both, and all in favor?